The Middle East is witnessing a moment of rare uncertainty, one that is quietly unsettling governments, investors, and power brokers far beyond the region. Behind closed doors and whispered briefings, a single question is gaining traction. Is Iran's leadership preparing for a scenario it once believed impossible? For years, Iran's ruling system projected endurance. It framed itself as immune to pressure, capable of surviving sanctions, isolation, and confrontation through ideological discipline and regional influence. But today, that image is under strain. Not because of a sudden military defeat, but because the economic foundation beneath the state is eroding faster than officials can contain. Iran's economy is no longer merely under pressure. It is buckling under accumulated failures. International sanctions remain in place, oil revenues no longer provide reliable relief, and years of structural mismanagement have hollowed out key sectors. Inflation has become a permanent condition rather than a temporary shock. Prices rise faster than wages, savings evaporate, and the national currency continues to slide, stripping households of stability. What makes this moment different from past crises is scale. Economic distress is no longer confined to the margins. It has reached teachers, pensioners, shop owners, factory workers, and even parts of the middle class that once acted as a buffer for the system. The state has responded with familiar tactics, printing money, cutting subsidies, increasing taxes, but each intervention seems to worsen the problem rather than solve it. As living conditions deteriorate, frustration has transformed into open defiance. Protests erupt with increasing frequency, driven not by ideology alone, but by exhaustion. Many Iranians no longer argue about reform. They question whether the current leadership can govern at all. Trust in institutions has weakened, and belief in official promises has eroded to the point of near irrelevance. This erosion of confidence has triggered something far more dangerous for the regime than street demonstrations: doubt within the elite itself. Reports suggest growing disagreements among power centers over how to respond. Some argue for controlled concessions to stabilize the economy. Others demand tighter repression to preserve authority. This internal friction has slowed decision-making and exposed fractures that were once carefully hidden. It is within this atmosphere that speculation has emerged about contingency plans at the highest level of power. Claims that Iran's supreme leader may be considering personal exit strategies, including potential refuge in Russia, have circulated quietly but persistently. Whether true or exaggerated, the mere circulation of such reports reflects how unstable the situation has become. Russia occupies a unique position in this context. As a long-standing strategic partner, Moscow has offered Tehran diplomatic protection, military cooperation, and economic coordination at times when few others would. For political elites facing uncertainty, Russia represents not just an ally, but a potential safe haven, one capable of offering protection while extracting influence in return. The symbolism of such a move would be staggering. The supreme leadership position in Iran is built on permanence, religious authority, and resistance to external pressure. Any hint of flight would shatter the narrative that has sustained the system since its founding. History shows that leaders often deny the possibility of collapse right up until the moment they begin preparing for it. Inside Iran, daily life continues to grow harsher. Businesses shut their doors. Youth unemployment fuels despair. Skilled professionals leave the country in growing numbers, accelerating a brain drain that weakens future recovery prospects. The banking system struggles with bad debt and shrinking confidence. Pension funds approach insolvency, threatening millions who depend on them. Perhaps most critically, financial instability raises questions about loyalty. Security forces, bureaucracies, and regional power structures depend on consistent funding. When salaries are delayed and benefits shrink, allegiance becomes less certain. In tightly controlled systems, economic collapse often precedes political rupture. not because of ideology, but because systems can no longer pay for obedience. Internationally, Iran finds itself boxed in. Sanctions restrict access to global markets. Diplomatic isolation discourages foreign investment. Even sympathetic partners remain cautious, unwilling to commit large resources to a system that appears structurally fragile. This leaves Tehran increasingly dependent on a narrow circle of allies, reducing flexibility and bargaining power. The regional implications are profound. Groups and governments that rely on Iranian funding and logistical support may find those lifelines weakening. This could reshape conflicts across the Middle East, alter alliances, and create new power vacuums. Rivals are watching carefully, not to celebrate instability, but to anticipate its consequences. Hovering above all of this is the nuclear issue. Economic desperation increases risk. A leadership under siege may escalate nuclear activities as leverage or lose control amid internal disorder. Global powers are acutely aware that economic collapse does not necessarily produce restraint. It often produces unpredictability. Despite the mounting pressures, official messaging remains defiant. State media emphasizes resilience and resistance, portraying hardship as temporary and manageable. Yet the contrast between rhetoric and reality has grown too wide to ignore. Behind the scenes, preparations for worst-case scenarios are likely underway, not because collapse is inevitable, but because leadership no longer trusts its ability to prevent it. The question, then, is not simply whether an individual might flee, but what that possibility reveals. When those at the top begin thinking about personal survival rather than national recovery, it signals a profound failure of governance. It suggests a system running out of options, credibility, and time. The months ahead will be decisive. Economic indicators, public unrest, elite unity, and foreign responses will shape Iran's trajectory. What once appeared unthinkable now enters serious discussion. And whether or not any leader actually leaves, the damage to authority may already be done. Iran stands at a turning point. The era of unquestioned control has ended, replaced by uncertainty and risk. How this crisis unfolds will not only define Iran's future, but may reshape the balance of power across the Middle East for years to come.